During a phone call, I heard my daughter say, "She never did anything for me, she just drains my money." The next day, she received fully paid plane tickets for her son's medical treatment. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached." I never meant to hear it. That's the thing about accidental eavesdropping, you can't unhear the words that slice through your heart. It was Tuesday afternoon, and I'd been trying to reach my daughter Melissa all day about the tickets I'd purchased for her son's treatment. Jake, my precious grandson, had been diagnosed with a rare metabolic disorder that required specialized care only available at Mayo Clinic in Rochester. I'd spent months researching doctors, treatments, and pulling strings with former nursing colleagues to get him an appointment with the top specialist. The phone connected, but Melissa didn't seem to realize she'd answered. I heard rustling, then her voice came through, clear as crystal. "She doesn't understand our life, Tyler. She's always asking for something." My daughter's voice was sharp, annoyed. "She hasn't done anything for me, just sucks my money dry whenever she can. I'm tired of her neediness." My hand trembled as I gripped the phone tighter. Was she talking about me? Rhonda Williams, the woman who had worked 3 jobs after her father died? Who had gone without meals when money was tight so Melissa could eat? "I know, babe," Tyler, my son-in-law, replied. "But just humor her for now. Once we move to Seattle, we can create some distance." My chest tightened. They were planning to move farther away? With Jake? I wish she'd just back off. She's always trying to insert herself into Jake's care like she knows better than us, his parents, Melissa continued. I couldn't breathe. Each word was a physical blow. The kitchen around me, the same kitchen where I'd taught Melissa to bake her first cookies, where I'd bandaged her skinned knees, where we'd cried together when her father died, suddenly felt foreign. "Hello? Mom? Are you there?" Melissa's voice changed completely, becoming sugary sweet. I realized the background noise had stopped. She must have noticed the call had connected. "Yes, I'm here," I managed to say, my voice thankfully steadier than I felt. I couldn't let her know what I'd heard. "Not yet. I was just calling about the appointment for Jake," I continued, surprised at how normal I sounded when inside I was crumbling. "Everything's scheduled for next Monday. The tickets should be in your email by tomorrow morning." "Oh. That's great. Thank you." Her voice held a note of surprise. And was that guilt? Did she realize what I'd overheard? We exchanged a few more pleasantries, discussing Jake's recent progress and the logistics of the trip. The entire time, I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching someone else have this conversation. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall. The calendar hanging there was filled with notes about Jake's appointments, Melissa's work schedule, and little reminders to call them. My life had revolved around them since Richard died 15 years ago. I remembered the night of Richard's heart attack. Melissa had been only 10, hiding under her covers as the paramedics worked frantically on her father in our bedroom. Later, at the hospital, when they told me he was gone, my first thought wasn't about how I would survive without my husband of 20 years. It was, how will I give Melissa the life Richard wanted for her? The next morning, despite barely sleeping, I followed through on my promise. I emailed the flight confirmations to Melissa and Tyler, first-class tickets that had cost me nearly 6 months of savings. I included a reservation for a suite at the hotel connected to the clinic so they wouldn't have to worry about transportation in the cold Minnesota winter. I didn't mention what I'd heard. What would be the point? Jake needed this treatment, and nothing, not even my shattered heart, would get in the way of that. As I pressed send, I felt something shift inside me. The blind devotion that had driven me for decades began to crack. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, had I given too much? Had my love become invisible because it was always there, like the air they breathed? The email notification popped up almost immediately. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. Love you." Those empty words hurt more than the harsh truth I'd overheard. I closed my laptop and stared out the window at the maple tree Richard had planted when Melissa was born. It was tall now, strong, its branches reaching toward the sky. I needed to be more like that tree, rooted in my truth, but no longer bending over backward until I broke. The morning after I sent those tickets, I woke up early, my body on autopilot. For a moment, everything felt normal, until the memory of Melissa's words crashed back like a wave. She hasn't done anything for me. I made coffee and carried it to my small home office, where a filing cabinet held decades of my life with Melissa. I pulled out the bottom drawer, the one I rarely opened, and started laying out the evidence of what nothing looked like. Hospital bills from when I'd caught pneumonia working night shifts at the nursing home but still sent Melissa to summer camp because she'd been looking forward to it all year. Loan papers for the second mortgage I'd taken on our modest house to pay for her college when her academic scholarship wasn't enough. The pink slip from the day I was laid off from my administrative job but still managed to send her money for textbooks. I hadn't kept these papers to throw them in Melissa's face someday. I'd kept them because each one represented a hurdle overcome, a promise kept to Richard that our daughter would have opportunities. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Ellen, my neighbor and oldest friend, holding a basket of muffins. "Thought you might need breakfast," she said, taking in my disheveled appearance with a concerned frown. "Bad night?" I ushered her in, grateful for the company. Ellen had known me since before Richard died, had watched me rebuild my life from the rubble of widowhood. She'd seen every sacrifice. "I overheard Melissa yesterday," I said, pouring her coffee. "She told Tyler I haven't done anything for her, that I just take her money." Ellen's face darkened. "That girl has a selective memory." "I know I should be angry," I said, surprising myself with the calm in my voice. "But mostly I'm just sad. Where did I go wrong that she doesn't see me?" Ellen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You didn't go wrong, Rhonda. You gave that girl everything. Maybe too much." "What do you mean?" "Remember when Melissa was 16 and totaled your car?" Ellen asked. "You took on extra shifts to buy another one rather than make her face consequences." I did remember. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for months, coming home so exhausted I could barely eat before collapsing into bed. Or when she called from college needing rent money because she'd spent hers on that spring break trip. Ellen continued. "You sent it without question, even though you were still recovering from surgery." The surgery Ellen was referring to had been more serious than I'd let on to anyone, especially Melissa. Stage 2 breast cancer. I'd gone through radiation treatments alone, scheduling them around when Melissa might call, never wanting to worry her. "I didn't want her to miss out," I said softly. "I didn't want her to struggle like I did." "And when did Tyler enter the picture?" Ellen asked. "Her senior year of college. He was already working at his father's investment firm." I sighed, remembering my first impression of Tyler: polished, confident, ambitious. Something about him had triggered a warning in me, but I dismissed it as overprotectiveness. "And things changed," Ellen said. It wasn't a question. They had changed. Melissa began canceling our weekly calls. When I visited her after graduation, Tyler dominated every conversation, subtly correcting Melissa whenever she spoke fondly of her childhood. "He's always treated me like I'm beneath him," I admitted. At first, I thought it was just his background. His family has money, old money. But it's more than that. It's like he resents any connection she has that isn't through him. "Classic isolation tactic," Ellen said, her experience as a social worker showing. And now they have Jake. Jake had been born 3 years ago, a beautiful boy with Richard's eyes and smile. The first time I held him, I fell completely in love. But Tyler had made it clear from the beginning that my role as grandmother would be limited, controlled. "When Jake was diagnosed last year, I thought things would change," I said. "They needed help, and I have the nursing background. But Tyler made sure you stayed on the sidelines," Ellen finished for me. I nodded, remembering the dismissive way he'd handled my suggestions for Jake's care. "I think he's convinced Melissa that I'm interfering, that I'm a burden." And now she believes it. Ellen's eyes narrowed. What are you going to do about it? I looked down at the papers spread across my table, the physical record of my love for Melissa, and felt a strange certainty settle over me. I'm going with them to Rochester, I said. I already requested time off from the clinic. I told Melissa I'd just booked my own ticket. And she agreed to that? Ellen looked skeptical. Not exactly, I admitted. But Jake's treatment will be intense. They'll need support, whether they think so or not. And I paused, gathering my courage. And I need to see for myself what's really happening. I need to understand how my daughter became someone who could say what she said. Ellen nodded slowly. You're not just going for Jake, or for Melissa. You're going for yourself. She was right. For 25 years, since the night Richard died, I'd lived for Melissa. Every decision, every sacrifice had been for her. I'd poured myself out like water, never questioning if the vessel was worthy. It was time to find out what remained of me. The Minneapolis airport buzzed with activity as I wheeled my carry-on toward baggage claim. I'd arrived a day earlier than Melissa and Tyler, wanting to get my bearings before they landed. The crisp Minnesota air hit my face as I stepped outside to catch a taxi, reminding me how far I was from my California home. Mayo Clinic area, the driver asked as I settled into the back seat. The Kaler Grand Hotel, please, I replied. I'd booked a modest room there, just down the hall from the suite I'd reserved for Melissa, Tyler, and Jake. The hour-long drive to Rochester gave me time to think. I hadn't told Melissa exactly when I was arriving, a small act of independence that felt strangely liberating. For once, I wasn't organizing my schedule around hers. At the hotel, I unpacked my few belongings, hanging my clothes carefully in the narrow closet. Among them was a navy dress I'd splurged on, something Ellen had insisted I buy. You always wear those shapeless scrubs or plain slacks, she'd said while practically dragging me into the department store. Try something that shows you're more than just a grandmother or a nurse. I'd felt silly spending money on myself, but looking at the dress now, I was glad I had. Tomorrow, when I met with Dr. Harriman ahead of Jake's appointment, I wanted to appear competent, confident, like someone whose medical insights were worth considering. I spent the rest of the day exploring the clinic campus and surrounding areas. The Mayo Clinic was impressive, a sprawling medical complex that represented hope for so many families like ours. I mapped out the route from the hotel to Jake's appointment building, timing how long the walk would take with a 3-year-old. I located the cafeterias with the healthiest options, the quietest waiting areas, the small gardens where someone could catch their breath between difficult consultations. In the evening, I found a pharmacy and purchased the items I knew would be helpful during Jake's treatment: gentle cleaning wipes that wouldn't irritate his sensitive skin, his favorite grape-flavored electrolyte drinks, the only brand of children's acetaminophen he could tolerate. Small things, but they mattered. Back in my hotel room, I powered up my laptop to check my email. There was a message from Melissa, sent just an hour ago. Mom, just confirming we land tomorrow at 11 a.m. Tyler says we'll get a car service to the hotel. Jake's appointment is at 9 a.m. Wednesday. You don't need to meet us at the airport. Short, practical, devoid of emotion. I typed a similarly brief response, confirming I was already in Rochester and offering to help with Jake if they needed a break after their flight. I hesitated, then added that I'd scheduled a preliminary meeting with Dr. Harriman tomorrow to discuss Jake's case history and medication sensitivities. Melissa's response came almost immediately. You what? Tyler and I are Jake's parents. We should be the ones meeting with his doctor first. I felt a flare of irritation. What did it matter who spoke to the doctor first, as long as Jake got the best care? I took a deep breath and replied, the appointment is just to provide his medical history from my perspective as a nurse who's observed his symptoms. Dr. Harriman suggested it might be helpful. I'm not making any decisions. No response came. I closed my laptop, trying not to let Melissa's reaction bother me. This was about Jake, not about who controlled his care. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my new navy dress and a simple cardigan, applying minimal makeup, just enough to hide the fatigue of travel and worry. The hospital complex was already bustling when I arrived for my 9 a.m. meeting with Drive Harriman. She turned out to be younger than I expected, but her eyes held the quiet confidence of someone who knew her field thoroughly. "Mrs. Williams, thank you for coming early," she said, shaking my hand. "Jake's case is complex, and I appreciate any insights you can provide." For the next hour, I shared my observations of Jake's symptoms, reactions to medications, and patterns I'd noticed during my visits. Dr. Harriman listened intently, taking notes and asking pointed questions that revealed her deep understanding of metabolic disorders. "Your nursing background has made you an exceptionally observant grandmother," she commented as our meeting wound down. "These details about his reaction to the standard protocol medications are particularly helpful." I felt a rush of validation. Here, in this office, my knowledge and experience were valued, not dismissed. As I was leaving, Dr. Harriman touched my arm lightly. "Mrs. Williams, I hope you'll continue to be part of these consultations. Multiple perspectives are invaluable in complex cases like Jake's." I nodded, thanking her, and stepped into the hallway, where I came face to face with Tyler and Melissa, who had arrived at the clinic much earlier than planned. Jake was asleep in Tyler's arms, his little face pale against his father's dark coat. The look on Melissa's face stopped me cold. "So this is what you meant by, just providing medical history," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Going behind our backs to influence his doctor?" And in that moment, I realized that the journey to healing, both Jake's and my relationship with Melissa, was going to be much harder than I'd anticipated. Tyler's face hardened as he shifted Jake in his arms. "Let's take this somewhere private," he said, glancing at a passing nurse. We found an empty family consultation room down the hall. Tyler laid Jake gently on the small couch, the child still mercifully asleep after what must have been an exhausting flight. "You had no right," Melissa hissed the moment the door closed. This is exactly what I was talking about to Tyler. "You always think you know best." The irony of her words, echoing what I'd overheard on the phone, wasn't lost on me. But instead of shrinking away as I might have in the past, I stood my ground. "I'm a registered nurse with 30 years of experience," I said calmly. "Dr. Harriman requested this meeting specifically because of my medical background. I didn't make any decisions about Jake's care." "That's not the point," Tyler cut in, his voice low but sharp. "The point is that you went around us. Again." I looked at my son-in-law, really looked at him. His expensive watch, designer clothes, and perfectly styled hair contrasted sharply with the shadows under his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. Something was off. "I'm sorry if it felt that way," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But Jake's health is my only concern. Shouldn't we all be focused on that?" Melissa ran a hand through her hair, a gesture so reminiscent of her teenage years that my heart ached. "Mom, please. Just let us handle this. We're his parents." "Of course you are," I agreed. "But I'm here to help, not take over." And Dr. Harriman seemed to find my observations useful. Tyler's phone buzzed, and he stepped away to check it, his brow furrowing deeply. When he returned, his demeanor had completely changed. "We need to get settled at the hotel," he said abruptly. "Melissa, take Jake. I'll deal with the luggage." He turned to me with barely concealed hostility. "We'll see you at dinner." As they left, with Melissa carefully carrying a still sleeping Jake, I noticed something odd. Tyler lingered to speak with the receptionist, his body language tense as he handed over what looked like a credit card. Curious, I approached the desk after he left, smiling at the young woman. "Excuse me, I'm Jake Williams's grandmother. I believe my son-in-law was just discussing payment arrangements." She looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't discuss patient financial information." "Of course, I understand. It's just that I've already arranged for all of Jake's expenses to be covered." I pulled out the confirmation email on my phone. "See? The insurance authorization and my personal guarantee for any remaining costs." Her expression shifted to confusion. "That's strange. Mr. Reynolds just told me they were having insurance complications and needed to set up a payment plan." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Why would Tyler say that if everything was covered? Back at the hotel, I tried to process this information. The suite I'd reserved for them was paid in full. The treatments were authorized. What payment plan was Tyler talking about? I was still pondering this when a knock came at my door. It was Melissa, alone and looking exhausted. "Jake's asleep again," she said. "Tyler went to grab some things from the pharmacy." Her voice was flat, emotionless. I invited her in, noticing how she hesitated before sitting at the edge of the bed. We sat in uncomfortable silence until I finally asked, "How are you holding up?" She laughed, a brittle sound with no humor. "How do you think?" "My son has a condition that might kill him, and we're drowning in medical debt even with insurance." I frowned. Medical debt? But the insurance approved everything, and I've covered the rest. Melissa looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "Tyler said our insurance denied half the treatments. He's been taking extra clients, working weekends to cover it all." Something clicked in my mind. "Melissa, let me show you something." I pulled out my laptop and opened my email, turning the screen toward her. "Here's the insurance approval for all of Jake's treatments. And here's my payment confirmation for the hotel and additional expenses." Melissa stared at the screen, her face draining of color. "That can't be right," Tyler said. She trailed off, eyes darting back and forth as she read. "What else has Tyler told you about the finances?" I asked gently. She looked up, and the confusion in her eyes slowly transformed into something else, anger. "He said we had to refinance the house to cover Jake's previous treatments. That we were behind on payments because you needed help with your mortgage last year." "My mortgage?" I was stunned. "Melissa, my house is paid off. Has been for 5 years. I've never asked you for money." She stood abruptly, pacing the small room. "That doesn't make sense. Tyler handles all our finances, but he always tells me where the money is going. He said we sent you over $30,000 last year for home repairs and medical bills." My heart sank. "I never received a penny from you. Not that I needed it." Melissa's phone buzzed with a text. Her hands shook slightly as she read it. "Tyler's coming back. I need to think." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Mom, if what you're showing me is true, we'll figure it out," I promised. "But Melissa, think carefully about what you've been told versus what you know to be true." After she left, I sat heavily on the bed, pieces falling into place. The coldness toward me, the financial struggles, Melissa's belief that I was taking their money, it all led back to Tyler. But why? What did he gain by lying about me? And more importantly, where had all that money really gone? I picked up my phone and called Ellen. I needed another perspective before confronting what was beginning to look like a deliberate campaign to isolate my daughter and grandson from me, and potentially something much worse. Ellen's advice echoed in my mind as I prepared for Jake's first treatment the next morning. "Tread carefully, Rhonda. If Tyler has been lying about money, he won't take being exposed lightly." I arrived at the clinic early, finding Melissa already in the waiting room without Tyler. Jake sat on her lap, playing with a small dinosaur toy. He looked up when I approached, his face lighting up. "Grandma," he exclaimed, reaching for me. The simple joy in his voice washed away some of my anxiety. Melissa looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes telling the story of a sleepless night. "Tyler had an emergency work call," she explained, her voice neutral. "He'll join us later." I nodded, sitting beside them and pulling out a small stuffed bear I'd bought for Jake at the hospital gift shop. As he happily examined his new toy, I lowered my voice. "Did you talk to Tyler about what I showed you?" She shook her head slightly. "He was on the phone all night. But I did some checking on my own." Her voice dropped even lower. "I accessed our online banking for the first time in years. There are withdrawals, large ones, that I can't explain." Before I could respond, a nurse called Jake's name. Melissa gathered him up, and I followed them into the treatment area. For the next hour, we focused solely on Jake as the medical team prepared him for his first round of enzyme therapy. Dr. Harriman arrived as they were connecting Jake's fore, smiling warmly at us both. "Mrs. Williams, good to see you again. And you must be Jake's mother." Melissa nodded, her face softening as she watched the doctor gently check Jake's vitals. I noticed how carefully Dr. Harriman explained each step of the treatment to both of us, treating us as equal partners in Jake's care. "The first treatment usually takes about 4 hours," she explained. "Jake may feel tired afterward, but that's normal. We'll monitor him closely for any adverse reactions." As Dr. Harriman continued reviewing the treatment plan, Tyler suddenly appeared in the doorway, his face tight with controlled anger. His eyes darted between us, lingering on the way Dr. Harriman was showing me Jake's chart alongside Melissa. "Sorry I'm late," he said, moving to Melissa's side and placing a hand on her shoulder that looked more possessive than comforting. "Work crisis." "Actually, Mr. Reynolds," Dr. Harriman said, "your timing is perfect. I was just explaining how your mother-in-law's observations helped us adjust Jake's treatment protocol to better accommodate his sensitivities." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I'm sure that's not necessary. We've researched this condition extensively." Dr. Harriman raised an eyebrow but continued professionally. "Every insight helps with rare conditions like Jake's. Your mother-in-law's nursing background has been particularly valuable." I could see Tyler struggling to maintain his composure. When Dr. Harriman left to check on another patient, he pulled Melissa aside, whispering urgently. I stayed with Jake, helping him adjust to the fore while pretending not to notice their heated conversation. When they returned, Melissa's face was flushed. "Mom, can you stay with Jake for a bit? Tyler and I need to discuss something." I nodded, watching them leave the room with a growing sense of dread. Jake, sensing the tension, looked up at me with worried eyes. "Everything's okay, sweetheart," I assured him, stroking his hair. "Sometimes grown-ups just need to talk." An hour passed before Melissa returned alone, her eyes red but her posture straighter than I'd seen in years. She sat beside Jake's bed opposite me, taking his small hand in hers. "Where's Tyler?" I asked cautiously. "He left," she said simply. Then, after a pause, I confronted him about the money, Mom. About all the lies. My heart pounded. "What happened?" She took a shaky breath. "At first he denied everything, said I was confused. Then he tried to blame you, said you were manipulating me." Her voice broke slightly. But when I showed him the bank records I'd found, large transfers to an account I'd never seen, he just changed. Like a switch flipped. "What kind of account?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "A private investment account. In his name only." She looked up, eyes shining with unshed tears. "He's been siphoning our money for years, money we should have been saving for Jake's treatments. And he made me believe it was going to you." I reached across Jake's bed, taking her free hand. "I'm so sorry, Melissa." She squeezed my hand hard. "No, Mom. I'm sorry." I believed him without question. "I said such horrible things about you, thought such horrible things." A tear finally escaped, trailing down her cheek. "Where is he now?" I asked, concerned about Tyler's state of mind. "He left the hospital. Said he needed to fix things." She looked worried. "I'm afraid he might do something desperate." He seemed unhinged when I confronted him. As if on cue, Melissa's phone buzzed with a text. Her face paled as she read it. "What is it?" I asked. "He's at the hotel," she whispered. "He says he's taking what's his and leaving." "Mom, all our things are there, Jake's medications, his special blanket, my wallet." I made a quick decision. "Stay with Jake. I'll go to the hotel and get your essential items." "No," she protested. "Tyler's too angry. It's not safe." I stood up, feeling a strength I hadn't experienced in years. "I've spent my whole life protecting you, Melissa. Let me do this one more thing." As I left the hospital, I knew I was walking into a confrontation that had been brewing for years, one that would finally bring all the hidden truths to light. I found Tyler in the hotel suite, frantically stuffing items into a suitcase. He barely looked up when I entered, his movements jerky and desperate. "Where's Melissa?" he demanded, continuing to grab whatever was within reach. "With Jake," I replied, keeping my voice calm despite the tension crackling in the air. "She asked me to get their things." Tyler laughed bitterly. "Of course she did. Sending mommy to clean up her mess. Some things never change." I moved carefully into the room, noting what he had packed, primarily expensive electronics and Jake's medical documents. On the bed lay Melissa's purse, emptied of its contents. Her wallet was in Tyler's hand. "Tyler," I said evenly, "put that down. It doesn't belong to you." He turned to face me fully, his expression a mixture of rage and something else, fear, perhaps. "You have no idea what belongs to me. You think you've won, turning her against me, but you don't know anything." "I know you've been lying about money," I said, standing my ground. "I know you told Melissa you were sending me thousands of dollars when you weren't. Where did that money really go, Tyler?" His face contorted. "I built something for us, investments Melissa was too simple to understand. I needed that money to secure our future, but now it's gone. All gone because the market turned." Suddenly, the pieces clicked together. "You gambled it away, didn't you? Not just your money, but money meant for Jake's treatments." The flash of guilt in his eyes confirmed my suspicion. "You don't understand what it's like," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "My father expects perfection. When the first investment failed, I had to double down. I was so close to making it all back." I felt a surprising wave of pity for him. Tyler, for all his arrogance, was still a scared boy trying to please a demanding father. But pity didn't excuse what he'd done. "Whatever your reasons," I said firmly, "you can't take Melissa's things or Jake's medications. Put them down, and we can talk about this reasonably." For a moment, I thought he might comply. Then his face hardened again. "You've always looked down on me. Both of you. Well, now you can figure it out together." He grabbed the suitcase and moved toward the door. I stepped in his path. "Tyler, stop. This isn't the answer." What happened next occurred in a blur. Tyler shoved past me, his shoulder connecting with mine hard enough to send me stumbling backward. I reached out to catch myself, my hand knocking over a lamp which crashed to the floor. The sound seemed to startle Tyler, who froze in the doorway. In that moment of hesitation, hotel security appeared, drawn by the noise. Behind them stood Dr. Harriman, her expression grave. "Is everything all right here?" the security guard asked, taking in the scene, the scattered belongings, the broken lamp, Tyler with the suitcase. Tyler attempted to compose himself. "Just a family disagreement." I was leaving. Dr. Harriman stepped forward. "Mr. Reynolds, I've been trying to reach you. The hospital needs to discuss payment arrangements for Jake's ongoing treatment, since you mentioned insurance problems yesterday." Tyler paled. "This isn't the time." "Actually," I interjected, "all of Jake's treatments have been approved by insurance and supplemented by me." I turned to Dr. Harriman. "There are no payment issues." The security guard looked confused but maintained his professional demeanor. "Sir, if you could step out into the hallway with me, we can sort this out." As Tyler was escorted out, Dr. Harriman stayed behind, helping me gather Melissa and Jake's essential items. "I came to the hotel to drop off some additional information about Jake's home care," she explained. I heard the commotion from the hallway. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "Your timing was perfect." She smiled slightly. I'd been doing this long enough to recognize family dynamics in crisis. When Melissa mentioned that her husband had left the hospital abruptly, I was concerned. We packed a small bag with Jake's medications, his favorite comfort items, and Melissa's personal belongings. As we worked, Dr. Harriman spoke thoughtfully. "Jake's condition is manageable with proper care, Mrs. Williams. But he needs stability, emotional as well as medical. I nodded, understanding her unspoken message. He'll have it. I promise. Back at the hospital, I found Melissa sitting beside Jake's bed, reading him a story as his treatment continued. Her face when she saw me carried relief, worry, and a question. Tyler's gone, I said, setting down the bag. Hotel security is involved now. She nodded, accepting this information with surprising calmness. Jake's doing well with the treatment. Dr. Harriman says his initial response is promising. We sat together as Jake dozed, the medication slowly dripping into his veins. After a while, Melissa spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what happens next, Mom. I've spent years believing things that weren't true. About you. About Tyler. About our life together. I took her hand. You don't have to figure it all out today. But I do need to say something today, she insisted, meeting my eyes directly. I'm sorry. For believing the worst about you. For pushing you away when you were only trying to help. The words I'd waited years to hear washed over me like a healing balm. I've made mistakes too, I admitted. Maybe I gave too much, didn't let you struggle enough to learn some lessons on your own. Jake stirred, his small hand reaching out in sleep. Both of us moved to comfort him, our hands meeting over his. What will you do now? I asked gently. Melissa looked at her son, then at me. Rebuild. For Jake. For myself. She squeezed my hand. With your help, if the offer still stands. Always, I promised. 6 months later, my small California house felt full of life again. Melissa and Jake had moved into the guest room while she filed for divorce and returned to school to finish her nursing degree, a dream she'd abandoned when she married Tyler. The kitchen table where I'd once spread out the evidence of my sacrifices now held Jake's coloring books, Melissa's textbooks, and morning coffee for two adults who were learning to talk openly with each other. Jake's condition was responding well to treatment. Dr. Harriman had connected us with specialists in California who continued his care, amazed at his progress. Tyler eventually agreed to a divorce settlement that included child support, though we had yet to see a payment. It didn't matter. Melissa and I had discovered we were stronger together than either of us had been alone. That evening, as we sat on the porch swing watching Jake chase fireflies in the yard, Melissa leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture so reminiscent of her childhood that my heart swelled. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. Some words don't need to be spoken aloud to be heard. In the gathering twilight, as my grandson's laughter filled the air, I finally felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the quiet certainty that I was exactly where I belonged.